A special interview today with Town Manager Mark Ells. We are in the Town Manager's conference room.
Yes.
This is quite nice, Mr. Ells.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Comfortable. Might make it our new set.
That's fine. You're always welcome.
Always welcome. So I know I'm a special visitor in the conference room, but you had a really special visitor this past week here in Town Hall.
Lieutenant Governor. Yes.
Amazing.
Always great to see. Karen Polito, she is, as the whole administration is, extremely accessible to municipal government and officials and elected officials and administrative people like myself. I say this often, but this is going into my 29th year in municipal government, and I've never had this sort of direct relationship with specifically the lieutenant governor.
Mm-hmm.
From time to time, the governor will engage, but I'm sure he's very, very busy, as she is. But she makes herself available. She's called me every significant event, whether it's weather or just leading into a major season or program, and she'll text or call and want to know how it's going and is there anything they can do to help us, and that's impressive, quite honestly.
Right, and when you talk about state government, they have a hand in municipal government, literally from the laws all the way down to a lot of things that we actually do.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Civics 101, you go from federal to state to local, right. And basically, depending on the laws and how they apply, specific to a location or more broadly, especially if it morphs to town, state might have jurisdiction, or state to state, feds might have it, right. Or country beyond our own, domestic borders. But so you rein it all in, and yes, everything we do is impacted by the state of Massachusetts and the laws and the regulations and the rules and the procedures that they establish. We also have local rule. Our charter is like the state or the Fed's constitution, and it lays out the powers and the duties of our government. But so we need to have this sort of relationship with our state, and we need to work together when it conflicts. We need to look at the needs, because they're very different from Boston, to Worcester, to Barnstable, and how we can collectively come together and address those needs for our state and then for each of our communities. And they're also, the governor and the lieutenant governor have served in local capacities in Massachusetts, and therefore completely understand what our town council or a town manager or respective staffs are trying to do in their community. So in many cases, it's just them understanding the community.
Right.
Because everyone's different.
Was this a check-in visit, or was there something specific she wanted to discuss with you?
Representative Crocker and Hunt were there with us, which was wonderful, and helped to coordinate it. Julian Sears' office came and participated in it, and it was reaching out to us and just wanting to. This wasn't a press conference. This was about Barnstable and how we can have that relationship I just described, and what our priorities are, and how her office may help us better. Her and the governor's office may be able to help us better. What are our priorities? Are they understanding, and are there ongoing efforts for those priorities where we need to coordinate so that we can get to the outcome we're trying to get to? So it was a very roll up your sleeves and have a discussion about we had a list, and we went through that and spoke with her afterwards a little bit about what can we do to help her with the broader initiatives. And certainly housing is one that we've made we've always tried to lead in that, but certainly it's in the forefront of our thinking here, and we've made some really good initiatives with our leadership on town council in that area. And then wastewater planning, water and wastewater planning, and continuing with those efforts. She brought up both of those specifically. So not surprising, but very much understanding of who we are on Cape Cod and here in Barnstable, and what we need to be focusing on.
Right, and the town has, you mentioned wastewater. Attended a presentation by Assistant Director Rob Steen with the DPW. Barnstable's really serious. We're on the road to making some changes and some inroads in wastewater and nitrogen loads and other traditional and non-traditional mechanisms to help our water and water quality. We rely on it so much, from tourism to safe drinking water. Can you touch upon a few of the things that the town's doing right now that's addressing wastewater?
Well, it's everything from traditional approaches, which is sewer expansion, to more innovative, non-traditional approaches, such as looking at various systems, environmental systems within our community, and understanding how they serve that environment that they're in, specifically dredging projects. And by dredging, by moving forward with a series of dredging projects over the coming years, will that help us to better flush the embayments, and therefore will we see a return on that investment? Not just, we all know that people come here for water. And that's just at the heart of what Cape Cod is. And many people have boats as well. So we know that the dredging does the navigable sort of aspect of enhancing our bays and our waterways. But when you jump more to the environmental side, there's certainly knowledge that improved flushing helps that nutrient loading issue. And trying to quantify that, though, is a whole different non-traditional sort of approach to looking at issues like nutrient loading to our coastal embayments. So fortunately for us, one of the positives that came out of the 208 plan was the state recognizing that they needed to have a broader thought process relevant to traditional and non-traditional. The traditional are sewers.
Right.
And, until the late 80s, the feds in the state were paying for 90% of sewering. So we saw many communities able to go forward with that without the same focus on the cost that they were going to have to bear to do that. Since then, it's gone over to a loan program. So basically, communities pay back the majority, if not all, of the costs of going forward with sewering. So the way that it was looked at changed. But it's taken that long. I've been involved with this issue since, my undergraduate was environmental engineering. So, came out of college thinking about it, trying to apply it, and then came to work for Barnstable in '89, and it was one of the first things we were doing was wastewater planning. So, it's taken this long to get to a point where looking at non-traditional sorts of efforts, I described the dredging, but also Mill Pond. They're looking at dredging Mill Pond to create really a detention of water as it moves from the river leading into it out to the headwaters of the Three Bay area, Prince Cove area. And in doing that, it becomes, it removes nutrients naturally. And then the projecting could be as high as 10 to 20% of the nutrient load, which translates to tens of millions of dollars if we have to remove it by sewering and treating. So the fact that we're able to sit with the state and have serious discussions about the non-traditional approaches now is a huge positive. And it will help us better manage both that existing environmental system and the costs that are associated with dealing with the broader issues. I never like to just limit it to, there's a big focus by the state on nutrient loading, which is well deserved.
Sure.
But I never like to just focus on that because we have water supply issues. We have emerging contaminant issues that are of equal concern to certainly the nutrient aspect of it. So I want to make sure as we talk about this moving forward, when I first got involved, I said I've been involved in this for almost 30 years. Nobody wanted to hear from the regulatory side about nutrient loading. And in fact, if you go back to our 80s and 90s plan, we actually got them to look at groundwater and how discharge through septic systems or treatment facilities and their effluent discharge, how once it went into the ground, it moved and where it went and what its impacts were. Back then, they stopped it at the ground. And so we spent a lot of time from about 89 to about 95 talking with them to get them to allow us to develop hydraulic models. And now we're moving over to, then the focus shifted from that to nutrient loading. And now the focus is shifting, expanding, I shouldn't say shifting, expanding to these emerging contaminants. And the thing that should resonate with all of our residents at this point is the primary source of nutrient loading is urine. It's coming from us.
Right.
It's not like we're bringing this in from somewhere else. It's coming from us. Primary source of emerging contaminants, when you move away from like the fire foams that we hear about at certain locations, airports and other locations, is us. Right. I mean, we're buying products with this in it. It's our, it's the perfumes we use. It's the fire retardant materials that are in our clothing and our furniture. It is the some of the cookware that we utilize. So when we wash it, it's going down the sink and through our systems and out into the environment. So educating our public is huge on that. It's a non-traditional approach. Educating our public, having the consumers know that we are one of the sources of this, and so perhaps in a preventative manner we can avoid this. Therefore, on the other end, avoid the millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars of cost. Because once it gets to the treatment plant, right, it's expensive.
Right. And there's some communities, I think about the Craigville area specifically, there's some communities you just can't sewer. There's just not the infrastructure under the roads to be able to put those pipes in. There's other like filling in old cranberry bogs. I thought that was fascinating that you could create wetlands. And then one of the other things that I think maybe residents don't always understand is that this isn't like from flushing your toilet today and it ends up in the water tomorrow. This is a 20 to 30 year movement underground of some of these nutrients and some of these emerging contaminants. It takes a long time for these to move. So I think tackling it now instead of keep saying, well, we'll see it in 5 years or 10 years if it's still the same. You're still moving. Some of these neighborhoods that were built in the 80s, those nutrients are now moving from those neighborhoods.
Yeah, it is interesting, and it's all education, because I remember when we were talking about sewering around Woquacket Lake, and residents were saying they lived on Finney's Lane, and we're not on the lake. And we were trying to explain that relationship and how things moved and what the potential impacts might be. And what became evident to me was that we didn't take the time to educate ahead of time so that people could do their research. One of the things about the resident here in Barnstable is they're intelligent people who want to understand. They may not agree with you, but they want to understand it, and then they're going to come to their own conclusion. If you don't give them that up front, then it's a much harder process to move through than if you take the time and you educate people, and then they're going to make their decisions, and their decisions will impact where our community will go in the future, because that's who we all work for. Right. But if you don't take the time, and I don't think we spend enough time educating. And you can't make people, though, want to spend the time to learn. So I always say this, but I love the captive audiences. If I can get into the schools and I can talk to the young people, they begin to carry that forward. And they're so receptive to learning, because that's That's where they're sitting. That's
Right.
what they're doing. And if you can give them practical examples in their own backyard, it just is that much better. So, and we take that opportunity every chance we get.
Excellent. Well, this was an opportunity today to at least a little bit of education for our residents, and we thank you for your time as always.
Thanks for having me.